The early morning sun filtered gently through the curtains of Awa's modest apartment, painting golden streaks across the room. She stood by the window, wrapped in a soft shawl, sipping her chai, watching the city below come to life. Despite the noise of honking cars and distant chatter, her world felt quiet, almost suspended in a delicate peace. Awa was a schoolteacher by profession, beloved by her students for her kindness and soft-spoken nature. But beneath her gentle demeanor lived a secret, one that would have shocked her friends, colleagues, and even her closest family. Several months ago, she had married Daniel, one of the most powerful and enigmatic business tycoons in the country. Their marriage had taken place in an intimate, private ceremony attended only by a Kozi and 2 trusted witnesses. It was Daniel's idea to keep it secret. He claimed he was protecting her from the ruthless media, his business rivals, and most importantly, from Mahira. Mahira was more than just a mistress. She had been Daniel's companion for years, elegant, poised, and sharp-tongued. She moved in high society circles and acted like the future Mrs. Daniel Khan. Despite Daniel's reassurances, Awa had always felt the looming presence of Mahira in their lives. She had seen photos of them in tabloids, headlines linking them romantically, and rumors of a wedding that never seemed to materialize. Daniel always dismissed them with a half-smile and a kiss on her forehead. "It's all noise," he'd say. "You're my real life, Awa. She's just a shadow I haven't shaken off yet." Awa had believed him. She had to. Love, after all, is trusting even when your heart whispers doubt. But everything changed the moment she saw the result on the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. Her fingers trembled, her breath caught in her throat. She was going to have Daniel's child. A mix of emotions surged within her: joy, fear, confusion. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, one hand resting on her stomach, the other holding the test stick like it was a secret too powerful for words. She decided that night she would tell Daniel. Maybe this baby would be the glue that finally bonded them into a real, open family. Perhaps he would leave Mahira once and for all. Her heart clung to that hope like a fragile bird grasping the edge of a nest. But fate had begun to stir already. Mahira, ever watchful and calculating, had noticed a change. Daniel had become distant, always making excuses not to see her, canceling dinners and private trips. She had seen a message flash briefly on his phone screen once: "Love you always." Her instincts screamed betrayal. And Mahira, the kind of woman who had built her entire identity around power, didn't take betrayal lightly. She hired a private investigator the very next day. Meanwhile, Awa planned a special dinner. She dressed simply but elegantly, placing candles around the room, her heart full of nervous excitement. But Daniel cancelled at the last moment yet again. "Emergency meeting," he texted. "I'll make it up to you tomorrow." As she blew out the candles one by one, Awa's smile faded, replaced by the first shadow of doubt. In another part of the city, Mahira held a blurry photo in her hands, Awa stepping out of Daniel's private car, hand protectively resting on her belly. The calm was ending. A storm was coming. Mahira sat in her luxury penthouse suite, the soft hum of classical music playing in the background as she scrolled through her phone. Her fingers, adorned with ruby rings, moved slowly, waiting for a message from Daniel. But once again, there was silence. No missed calls. No updates. Just a growing emptiness. It had been 2 weeks since she had seen him last. Daniel, once attentive and available at her beck and call, had suddenly become distant. And Mahira, who prided herself on control, felt it slipping through her manicured fingers. He had lied to her before, but this time, something was different. He wasn't just avoiding her, he was hiding something. Her suspicions reached a boiling point when one of her house staff, who moonlighted as a finder of secrets, presented her with a letter he had fished out from the trash at Daniel's city apartment. It was handwritten, delicate in tone, and full of unfiltered emotion. The signature was simple: Awa. Mahira's eyes narrowed as she read the lines again and again. "Our baby kicked today. I can't wait to see your face when you feel it for the first time. I love you, Daniel, forever yours, Awa." The paper crumpled violently in her fist. She felt as though her insides had turned to acid. A baby. A secret wife. Everything she had feared, Everything Daniel had promised wasn't true was. The betrayal was so loud in her head that it drowned out the music, the city noise, even the sound of her own breathing. Awa wasn't just a fling. She had everything Mahira thought was hers: love, commitment, and now, a child. But Mahira wasn't the kind of woman who cried in corners. She was a storm wrapped in designer silk. And when betrayed, she didn't weep, she burned. She waited until Daniel left on a scheduled business trip overseas, something she confirmed through his assistant. Then, with calculated sweetness, she sent a message to Awa from Daniel's number. "Surprise for you at the beach house tonight. Just you and me. Wear something light. Can't wait to see you. D." Awa, ever hopeful and trusting, didn't hesitate. She dressed in a flowing white gown that danced around her ankles and made her baby bump look like a glowing secret. Her face held a soft glow, the kind that comes from love and anticipation. She drove to the beach house, the sea breeze lifting her hair as she stepped inside. But it wasn't Daniel who greeted her. It was Mahira. The air thickened in an instant. Awa's smile fell as her eyes adjusted to the dimly lit room. Mahira stood near the kitchen island, her posture still and eerily calm, but her eyes wild with rage. "Looking for my man?" Mahira sneered, slowly lifting a kettle from the stove. The steam hissed ominously. Awa instinctively stepped back, clutching her stomach. "Why are you here? Where's Daniel?" Mahira laughed. A cold, broken sound. "He's where he always is, lying to us both. But only one of us is leaving this house tonight. And it won't be you." Without warning, Mahira hurled the kettle of boiling water toward Awa, aiming directly at her swollen belly. A scream tore from Awa's throat, shrill and agonizing. She crumpled to the ground, skin scalded and blistering, the pain immediate and unbearable. Her hands trembled as they tried to protect the life inside her, her voice cracking as she sobbed, "Please, my baby, help." But Mahira didn't stop. She stood over her for a moment, watching with cold satisfaction. Then, as calmly as if she were leaving a dinner party, she turned and walked out the door, her heels clicking on the tiles like gunshots. Awa lay motionless, whimpering as tears mixed with sweat and blood. The smell of burnt skin lingered in the air. She tried to crawl toward the door, whispering for help, but the pain stole her strength. And the night swallowed her screams. The early morning tide whispered against the shore, indifferent to the horror that had unfolded the night before. In the faint glow of dawn, a fisherman named Baba Karim pushed his small boat into the water, his back aching with age but his hands steady with routine. As he passed by the beach house, he noticed something unusual: a door left wide open, curtains flapping like warning flags. Curiosity tugged at him. When he stepped inside, the silence chilled him. Then, in the far corner of the tiled floor, he saw her, a young woman lying twisted on the ground, her skin blistered, her dress soaked in blood and water. She was barely conscious, her lips moving, but the words were too soft to catch. "Help, baby," she murmured. Without hesitation, Baba Karim wrapped her in a spare fishing net, careful not to touch the raw patches of skin, and drove her in his rickety pickup to the nearest hospital, 30 kilometers away. Every bump in the road echoed with her soft cries, and he muttered prayers under his breath the entire drive. At the emergency ward, chaos erupted the moment she was wheeled in. The nurses gasped at the severity of her burns, deep red streaks on her stomach, arms, and thighs. The attending doctor quickly called in both the trauma team and an obstetrician. "She's pregnant," a nurse shouted as they cut through her dress. The doctor's face darkened. "We may lose them both if we don't act now." Inside the operating theater, a battle began. The baby's heart rate was dangerously erratic, the mother's vitals unstable. A special unit was called in for neonatal support. For 3 long hours, the staff fought for 2 lives. And somehow, by the grace of fate, they won. The baby's heartbeat stabilized. Awa, though unconscious, was no longer in critical danger. Her burns had been treated, though the scarring would be permanent. But she was alive. And so was her child. Word traveled quickly. That same morning, halfway across the country, Rayyan was completing a security audit on a government installation when his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize, but he answered it anyway. "Are you the brother of Awa Siddiqui?" asked a firm voice. Yes. Who is this? This is Dr. Raza from Sahil General Hospital. Your sister has been admitted. It's serious. Rayyan didn't wait for details. He booked the next flight, abandoning his post without hesitation. He hadn't seen Awa in months, not since she told him about the man she had fallen in love with, and the secret he had urged her to keep. Rayyan had been skeptical but chose to respect her decision, trusting she was safe. Now he regretted that trust with every fiber of his being. When Rayyan arrived at the hospital later that evening, the sight of his sister nearly broke him. Her face was pale, bandaged in places, and her arms were marred with angry red patches. Machines beeped beside her bed, and her stomach, though now covered, bore the weight of an unspeakable act. He sat beside her, silent, watching. Hours later, Awa stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, glazed with pain and medication. But when she saw Rayyan, a single tear rolled down her cheek. Rayyan, she whispered, voice hoarse. She tried to kill me, the mistress. Mahira. The room grew still. Rayyan leaned in, his voice a low whisper. Tell me everything. And she did. Every word. Every lie. Every betrayal. Every second of the boiling water that seared her flesh. Rayyan listened, jaw clenched, eyes dark with fury. By the time she finished, his fists were trembling. Rayyan stood, slowly, and looked at his sister, what was left of her, and then at the doorway. Don't worry, Awa, he said quietly. She'll wish she had never touched you. Rayyan hadn't known rage like this in years. As a former intelligence officer trained in psychological warfare and surveillance, he had seen humanity at its worst. He'd tracked war criminals across continents, broken encrypted networks, and stared evil in the face without blinking. But nothing had ever made his blood boil like seeing his sister broken, her body burned and trembling, because of a woman's jealousy. Mahira had no idea who she had provoked. Rayyan's return to the city was quiet and calculated. He didn't announce himself, didn't post updates, didn't even visit old contacts in person. He operated from a secured location outside the city, a tech-stuffed apartment provided years ago by a government program that still owed him favors. His first move, surveillance. He had a private investigator trail Mahira, her meetings, calls, visits. Every contact she made was logged, analyzed, cross-referenced. She was still active in social circles, smiling on red carpets, sipping wine in luxury lounges. To the world, she was glamorous. Untouchable. To Rayyan, she was already marked. Then came the digging. Within days, he unearthed what the public had never seen, Mahira's rot beneath the gold. A silenced scandal involving a young model who mysteriously left the country after accusing Mahira of threats. A forged charity venture that funneled donor money to offshore accounts. Blackmail audio clips of her manipulating an older politician into land deals. A hush payment wired to a hospital years ago, for a different girl. One who didn't survive. Rayyan stared at the screen as each document loaded, each photo rendered, each voice file played. What Mahira had done to Awa wasn't a first, it was part of a pattern. She preyed on anyone who got in her way. She destroyed them with charm, then fire. But this time, her victim had a brother who didn't believe in mercy. Rayyan called in favors, quietly, surgically. A cyber forensic expert from his old unit helped him decrypt Mahira's financial records. An old friend in Karachi's Special Investigations Unit discreetly verified her involvement in 3 sealed cases. A journalist he once protected during a riot agreed to hold a story until the right moment. He created a dossier, thick and damning, time-stamped with details no one could dismiss. It wasn't just revenge, it was total exposure. And unlike Mahira's petty games, Rayyan's plan would unfold with brutal precision. But Rayyan didn't stop at documentation. He wanted Mahira to feel it. He sent her anonymous messages, screenshots of old bank transfers, a pixelated still of her throwing the kettle, whispers of her secrets arriving at her door in red envelopes. One night, a photo of Awa's scarred stomach appeared in her mailbox with the note. You started this fire. I'll end it. Mahira grew paranoid. She started cancelling appearances, firing staff, accusing friends of betrayal. She felt the walls closing in, but couldn't prove who was doing it. Exactly as Rayyan wanted. By week's end, Mahira called Daniel in a panic. "Someone's trying to destroy me," she cried. "They're planting lies. You have to believe me." But Daniel was distant, weary. The hospital visit to Awa had changed him. He hadn't said a word during their last meeting. Just stared at her like she was someone he didn't recognize anymore. "You should take a break," he said coolly. "Lay low." Mahira, once a queen, was suddenly left alone, no allies, no audience, no shield. Rayyan knew the moment was near. He wasn't going to strike from the shadows anymore. He was going to walk into her world and watch it collapse, brick by brick, breath by breath. For Awa. For every woman Mahira had ever silenced. For justice. And soon, for the world to see. Rayyan had learned long ago that vengeance wasn't loud. It didn't always wear anger on its sleeve. Sometimes, it whispered. Sometimes, it waited. And sometimes it dressed itself in calm, methodical precision. It was time. With his full dossier complete, Rayyan initiated phase 1 of his operation. He began with a set of carefully crafted anonymous tips sent to the Anti-Corruption Bureau, major news outlets, and a financial crime watchdog. Each envelope contained damning evidence, offshore transactions, forged charity ledgers, and connections to known blackmailers. He timed the leaks perfectly. At 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, while Mahira sipped her imported espresso in a rooftop cafe, her phone buzzed with a message from her publicist. "You're trending for the wrong reasons. We need to talk. Now." Across the internet, hashtags began to rise like wildfire. #Mahira fraud. #expose the Queen. Journalists swarmed with questions. A whistleblower from one of her foundations confirmed she had funneled hundreds of thousands from donor funds into her personal accounts. News anchors began replaying an old interview where Mahira declared she personally oversees every penny spent. The press turned merciless. Rayyan watched it unfold from a remote laptop, every headline another step in the collapse. Meanwhile, Daniel was dragged into the storm. Mahira begged him for support, claiming innocence. But his confidence was already shaken. Visiting Awa in the hospital had opened his eyes in a way he hadn't anticipated. He saw the burns with his own eyes. He saw her silent tears. And he couldn't ignore the timing. The dinner Awa had been lured to under his name, the day he had been away. Now, with the fraud scandals erupting and whispers of attempted murder starting to surface, Daniel began to question everything. He had once thought Mahira was clever, misunderstood, even brilliant. But now, she just looked like a stranger with blood on her hands. "I need some time," he told her flatly when she called him crying. "You should get a lawyer." That silence from him, that absence of blind loyalty, cracked something inside Mahira. She threw her phone across the room, shattering it. But it wouldn't stop the flood. Phase 2 had begun. Rayyan posed as an international investor under the alias Ramiz Faruqi, a Dubai-based venture capitalist interested in Mahira's supposed luxury fashion brand. He set up fake LinkedIn profiles, a full website, and even scheduled an online press release about the launch of Faruqi Capital Group. Mahira, desperate for a win, bit the bait. She agreed to meet with Ramiz at an upscale hotel for a private pitch. She showed up in a tailored cream suit, flawless as always, but clearly nervous. Her usual entourage was absent, too many had jumped ship as her empire crumbled. Inside the meeting suite, everything was staged, hidden cameras, microphones, and a legal consultant present under the pretense of compliance. Rayyan, in character as Ramiz, greeted her with charm. "I've heard you're a woman of vision," he said smoothly. "But I've also heard whispers. Convince me they're false." Mahira's smile didn't reach her eyes. She launched into a rehearsed monologue about media slander, jealous rivals, and misunderstood transactions. But every lie she uttered was being recorded, time-stamped, and mirrored onto a server monitored by authorities. Then came the final move. Rayyan slid a document across the table, an agreement that would require full financial disclosure. "We don't invest blindly," he said. "I'll need your actual records. No middlemen." Mahira hesitated, pride wrestling with desperation. But in the end, desperation won. She agreed to send the documents Rayyan knew would seal her fate. The next morning, law enforcement raided 2 of her properties. Arrest warrants were issued for financial fraud, tax evasion, and obstruction of justice. News stations replayed footage of her being escorted into a police van in sunglasses and silence. And yet, this was only the beginning. Rayyan didn't blink as he watched the scene play out on his screen. This was no longer just personal. It was justice. The stage was set. The grand hall of the Hilton Plaza was packed with journalists, influencers, and industry elites. An exclusive press conference had been announced by Faruqi Capital Group, the fictitious investor Rayyan had created to lure Mahira into her final performance. With the promise of a multi-million-dollar international fashion deal, the media turned out in droves. No one wanted to miss the dramatic comeback of Mahira Ahsan, the queen of scandal, ready to reclaim her throne. She arrived at the venue like a phoenix rising, draped in a crimson silk gown, her hair sleek, her makeup flawless. Her lips curved in a confident smile, the kind she had mastered long ago, even when her world was secretly on fire. But this time, the flames were waiting in the wings. As she stepped onto the stage, a large LED screen behind her flickered to life. At first, it showed her name in gold letters, alongside the Faruqi Capital logo. She began her speech, thanking the press for their belief in her, for standing by her. Then, without warning, the screen glitched. A new video began to play. It was grainy at first. A home camera angle. A woman entering a beach house. Mahira's voice. And then, the boiling water. The scream. The collapse. Gasps echoed through the room. Mahira froze mid-sentence. Her eyes darted to the screen in horror as images of Awa's injuries followed, medical reports, hospital footage, and then, still frames of Mahira leaving the house, her expression cold and proud. "No, this is fake," she shouted, turning to the host, to the cameras, to the lights that suddenly felt too hot. "Shut it off." But no one moved. The second clip began, audio recordings of Mahira blackmailing officials, transferring funds, laughing about breaking the girl. Each word was a hammer shattering her carefully built facade. Mahira began backing off the stage. "This is illegal. You can't do this to me. I am." She stopped. Standing at the foot of the stage, in a black suit, eyes sharp and unblinking, was Rayyan. The cameras found him immediately. Flashes exploded across the room. Everyone could feel the tension crackle like thunder before a storm. Rayyan stepped forward, microphone in hand. "I want the world to see what evil looks like when it smiles." The crowd fell into stunned silence. "This woman," he said, pointing at Mahira, "tried to kill my sister. Awa Siddiqui, an innocent woman, a schoolteacher, a pregnant wife. She was lured to a house with a message that came from this woman, and was burned with boiling water." Gasps filled the air. She then walked away, leaving Awa to die. "My sister barely survived. Her child, my niece, survived by a miracle. And while we prayed for her life, this woman was out sipping champagne, giving interviews, calling herself misunderstood." Mahira's composure cracked visibly. Her hands trembled. "You set me up. You manipulated everything." "No," Rayyan replied coldly. "I revealed everything." He turned to the cameras. "This is for every woman who's been silenced by power, fear, or shame. For every victim who was told no one would believe her. Let this be a warning. Truth doesn't stay buried, and neither does justice." At that moment, 2 uniformed officers entered the room. Mahira's eyes widened in disbelief as they approached. "This is a mistake," she screamed. "You can't arrest me. Do you know who I am?" Rayyan didn't flinch. "You're done, Mahira." The officers read her rights as they handcuffed her on stage. The cameras didn't stop rolling. Reporters didn't stop clicking. Social media exploded with live footage. Within minutes, the hashtags changed. #Justice for Awa. #Mahira exposed. #The fall of a queen. As Mahira was led away, she let out a piercing scream, shrill, desperate, broken. It echoed through the hall, cutting through the silence like a blade. And in that moment, the world stopped and listened. The hospital room was quiet, warm, and full of soft light. The chaos of the past weeks had faded into the background, replaced by the steady rhythm of a heartbeat monitor and the gentle breathing of a newborn cradled in her mother's arms. Awa stared down at her daughter, her eyes misted with both exhaustion and awe. The baby, wrapped in a pastel pink blanket, was impossibly small, her features delicate yet strong. She yawned softly in her sleep, her tiny fingers curling instinctively around Awa's. "She's beautiful," Rayyan whispered from beside the bed, his voice thick with emotion. Awa smiled weakly. "Zoya," she said softly. "That's her name." "Zoya," he echoed, letting the name roll off his tongue. "It means life." "And that's exactly what she is," Awa replied, brushing a kiss across her daughter's forehead. "After everything, she's what's left standing. A new beginning." News of Mahira's arrest had spread like wildfire. Videos of her public downfall were shared across every platform, dissected by talk shows, and praised by women's rights groups. She was facing multiple charges now: attempted murder, financial fraud, obstruction of justice. The evidence was too strong, too public to be buried. Daniel had gone silent during the peak of the storm, facing immense backlash from the media and his own business partners. But he eventually held a press conference, a small, quiet one with no grand staging or pre-written script. He looked pale, older somehow, as he spoke. "I was a fool," he admitted. "I failed to protect someone I loved. I failed to speak when it mattered. But no more. I've filed for divorce from Mahira Arson, and I intend to take full accountability for the silence that hurt others." It wasn't enough to erase what had happened, but for Awa, it was a beginning. Daniel visited her a few days after Zoya's birth. He brought no gifts, only quiet words and a face full of guilt. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," he said, standing at the doorway. "But I just wanted to see her, to see both of you." Awa allowed it. Not because she forgot, but because her heart had softened under the weight of her daughter's heartbeat. "She's your daughter," she said simply. "But being her father, that's something you'll have to earn." Rayyan remained close by, always. He refused to return to his post abroad, choosing instead to stay near Awa and Zoya. He became the baby's protector before she could even lift her head. "I want her to grow up knowing what strength looks like," he told Awa one night as they watched Zoya sleep. "Not the kind that breaks people, but the kind that protects them." As the weeks passed and the burns on Awa's skin began to heal, so too did the wounds in her heart. She began journaling again, long, honest entries about pain, survival, and hope. Rayyan encouraged her to turn those pages into something bigger. So she began writing a memoir, not for fame or recognition, but for the women who didn't have brothers like Rayyan or platforms to scream from. She titled it, "Scars of Silence, A Survivor's Truth." Each chapter poured out of her like a cleansing storm, washing away shame and fear. And with every word, she felt a little more whole. Zoya stirred in her sleep, letting out a soft sigh. Awa leaned her head back on the pillow, her hand still resting on her daughter. "I thought I had lost everything," she whispered. Rayyan sat beside her, his voice quiet but steady. "But instead, you found everything that truly mattered." Outside, the city moved on. But inside that room, something sacred had begun. Healing. The world hadn't been watching at first. When Awa was burned, she was just another name, another statistic. Another woman hurt in silence, tucked beneath the weight of scandal and power. But Rayyan changed that. His act of justice didn't end with the downfall of a mistress. It became a rallying cry, a declaration that silence would no longer be the price of survival. As videos of the press conference flooded every screen, and headlines called it the burn that broke a nation's silence, people began to pay attention. For the first time in years, national focus shifted. Politicians who had once ignored women's safety bills were now standing behind podiums, promising reform. Celebrities tweeted in solidarity. Human rights lawyers volunteered to represent abuse victims. Grassroots campaigns surged in strength. Within a month, a survivor-led initiative titled Project Zoya was launched in Awa's name. It funded emergency shelters, trauma therapy for assault survivors, and legal aid for women with nowhere else to turn. The name Zoya, meaning life, became more than a name. It became a symbol. Awa didn't hide anymore. Her memoir, Scars of Silence, was published and instantly sold out. She appeared on talk shows, not as a victim, but as a mother, a fighter, a voice for millions. Her scars, once painful reminders, became medals of strength. Rayyan stayed in the background, refusing credit, but the world wouldn't let him vanish. Journalists called him the brother with the backbone, the man who made justice personal. Quietly, respectfully, he supported Awa's mission and protected Zoya with the same fierce love that had brought him home. The nation had seen something rare, raw, real love between siblings turned into a force greater than revenge. They had seen what it meant when justice wasn't just about punishment, but about power reclaimed. Years from now, people would still talk about it, not because of the scandal, not because of the downfall, but because of the courage. Because in the end, he didn't just protect her, he made the world hear her scream, and remember it.